The holiday season is here, and I hope you've had a blessed, healthy, and joyous one thus far. While many of us are looking ahead towards the new year, this is the time where the NBA season usually hits the big drop of the proverbial roller coaster that it tends to be. All-star voting has kicked off now. Trade rumors are heating up, and front offices are either starting to look forward towards their ideal playoff run or their ideal draft lottery suit. So given the circumstances, I have some hot topics to talk about today, like the potential trades of Zach LaVine and Jimmy Butler, the NBA's new All-Star game format, and then with seemingly questionable TV ratings, I kind of want to give my NBA State of the Union, if you will, which to me goes way beyond the TV ratings discussion. So after some hip-hop heavy episodes on Hip to the Games, it was only right that I match the heat of this NBA season for today's show with some hot topics. All right, so as always, get your popcorn ready for another hefty episode of H2DG. Welcome to Hip to the Games, the podcast for you, the basketball junkie and the hip-hop head. I'm your host, Desmond, and I too have had hoop dreams and enjoy the beautiful genre of hip-hop and its history. Together, we will enjoy some of the greatest albums, songs, artists, players, moments, teams, and so much more, while even mixing the two on occasion, all in my hope that you remember why you love both or either of these to begin with. You'll soon understand that Hip to the Games is more than just a podcast, it's a lifestyle. And if you were looking for a platform that combines both basketball and hip-hop, you've come to the right place. Welcome to a new episode of Hip to the Games. Shout out to you if you are a loyal listener and are showing that you are indeed hip to the games by consistently returning to the show. Whether you're listening on your favorite platform or watching on YouTube, I sincerely thank you for all your support. And if you do happen to be new to H2DG, welcome. I am happy to have you here. If throughout this episode you do like what you're hearing, be sure to hit that subscribe button or follow button on whatever platform you're listening to or watching on right now to stay tapped in with all things hip to the games. And of course, that includes my solo YouTube channel. All right, if you've been paying attention, I dropped 4 new videos, which were reaction videos to some of the NBA's best Christmas highlights. I really had fun doing that. So again, when I say stay tapped into all things hip to the games, that includes that as well too. You know, not just what's going on here, but of course what's going on my hub for more shorter form content. So either or, all that support is appreciated. And before we really get into today's episode, though, you already know the drill. I got to give my pregame shout outs out the way. The first one always going to the creative director, Jesus Christ, for another H2DG episode, as it's always a blessing to get in front of this microphone and do what he's placed in me to do. And the second one goes to my 19 Media Group family for the opportunity to represent the home team. All right, you see that blue and white logo sitting in the corner. Don't sleep. Be sure to follow 19M Group on Twitter, 19 Media Group on Instagram, 19 Media Group on YouTube to follow everything going on with the network. We have a variety of shows across sports, music, culture, hosted by some passionate independent podcasters. So I'm sure you can find another teammate of mine to support, whether that's through likes, comments, reposts, listens, buying merch. Any of that support is seen and felt and appreciated. And speaking of which, if you follow me and the show, you'll know that Hip to the Games is a nominee for Best Basketball Podcast for the 2025 Sports Podcast Awards. And if you want an easy way to show just how much you enjoy Hip to the Games, here's how you can cast your vote for your boy. I'm Desmond Powell, host and creator of Hip to the Games, and I am incredibly grateful to announce that the show has been nominated by podcast professionals from some of the biggest networks in the industry for the chance to be named Sports Podcast Group's Best Basketball Podcast. While Hip to the Games merges the love of basketball and hip-hop, it's an honor to know that one side of the spectrum has received this kind of love. And as a fan of the show, this is a very easy way for you to show your support for Hip to the Games. You can cast your vote by visiting sportspodcastgroup.com, navigating to their drop-down menu, and clicking the awards tab to view the 2025 shortlist. There, you'll see the Best Basketball Podcast icon, where you'll scroll down and find Hip to the Games, where you can hit the like button to officially lock in your vote. Regardless of the outcome, Hip to the Games will always be about celebrating the brilliance of basketball and hip-hop's past and present. So make sure to get your votes in before January 13th as you remain such an important part of this podcast growth. I sincerely thank you for all your support. All right, so transitioning right into today's show. If you are a returning listener, you already know how I do. But if you are new to the show, this episode is going to be organized by the format that pays homage to the classic hip hop song structure. All right, I got 3 verses for you today, which represents 3 topics for the show. The first verse always has to set the tone. The middle verse brings the climax or the rising action, if you will. And then that last verse, your last verse has to be the haymaker, the best verse for last. And since we always got to start verse 1 off with a bang, I gotta start with some pretty intense trade rumors surrounding 2 all-star caliber players. But real quick, with the NBA season heating up indeed, here's how you can do the same with H2DG's latest sponsor. The NBA is finally back, and a new season means new ways to get into the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Who's draining threes from downtown? Who's beasting on the boards? Get behind your favorite players and prop the bets that you can make on DraftKings, the home of NBA player props. And if you happen to be a rookie, new DraftKings customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. All right, 2 points is 2 points, no matter how the ball hits the nylon, and every point counts with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code BASELINE. That's code BASELINE for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, and Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, see dkng.co/bball. That's dkng.co/bball. H2DG is working in affiliation with DraftKings and will be compensated for your patronage by utilizing the link provided. Tipping off with verse 1, I had to touch on the recent trade rumors surrounding 2 of the NBA's best wings, and that is the rumors surrounding Jimmy Butler and Zach LaVine. All right, now being that I record early in the week to promote the episode before Friday, I'm sure that news will break for one of these guys, if not both of these guys, and throw my timing all the way off. So I'm going to try my best to share my thoughts on the potential scenarios we might see. Of course, it is the holiday week, though, so maybe they'll be a little nice and be like, we'll cool out on the rumors, let them spend time with the family, you know what I'm saying, and then we can get right back to it. But we'll see. You never know with the NBA, and I'm really hoping and praying right now as I'm talking that nothing is breaking. But I do want to start with Jimmy Butler because, honestly, I was a bit shocked at how he opened himself up to trades mid-season. Sure, with 1 year left on his deal, it's the classic case of, trade him for a return in value as opposed to watching him leave in free agency with nothing in return, right? I get that. I also understand with Jimmy being 35 years old now, how the Miami Heat, they're pretty much showing signs that it's time for Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo to lead the franchise into what they hope is a new era of success. So that's cool. That's also very understandable. But I was just surprised that Jimmy, as much as he's loved being in Miami and been vocal about that, he felt it was time for a change of scenery. I can't lie, I was a little put off by that because, again, I know it's a new era, right? Guys want to play elsewhere, the whole loyalty thing is some of these teams start to show their true colors, right? And then I think the rest of the NBA is waking up. I think even a guy like De'Aaron Fox, he's been very vocal of saying hey, I want to be a Sacramento King, but I also know how y'all do, and I could be in a new uniform, and if y'all not cooperating and we're not trying to win games, I will gladly go somewhere else, so I think that's the NBA that we're in now. But yeah, I think it was the minute that Jimmy Butler, that this news came out, and I saw that Jimmy Butler was looking at Golden State, Dallas, and Houston specifically, that at this stage in his career, he wants to play the Andre Iguodala Warriors role, right? Focus strictly on defense, make the right passes, and score when you're open. Some people don't understand his fit with Golden State specifically, but I'm telling you, that is exactly what Jimmy Butler has in mind. That is exactly why he's interested in that team, because they have shooting. Steph Curry is still an all-star caliber player. Draymond is still the glue of that team. If they get Jimmy Butler, it'll be like when they had Andre Iguodala, who they won championships with. That's what Jimmy Butler has in mind. So, I like I said, I think that's why he's interested in them. And then you look at the Mavericks, right? I think it's a very similar thing. The Dallas Mavericks, they have Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving. They just made the finals last year. Got a lot of nice role players there. They acquired Klay Thompson. He could do the same thing there. And then even the Phoenix Suns, they've emerged as a suitor for him as well. All of these teams have established superstar players, scorers in particular, to the point where Jimmy can just chill. Jimmy has always been that kind of player. I've seen the Heat win games where Jimmy scored just 8 points, but he played great defense. He got his teammates involved. And of course, there's the other side of that, right? We've also seen Jimmy Butler turn on that switch and drop 55 the way he did versus Milwaukee in the playoffs, right? And it just looked like he couldn't miss. So he's on the very short list of players who can have that kind of effect on a franchise, to where you can score single-digit points and still find a way to win, and you can drop almost 60 and lead your team to win. So in this potential newer role for him, he doesn't have to put that wear and tear on his body the way he did for Miami, because there were some games, you remember, Jimmy Butler was genuinely limping after games because he put his heart and soul on the line. He had an incredible underdog-esque run with the Miami Heat. And, outside of his time in Chicago, a lot of those moments are my favorite moments of Jimmy's career. I think many people are going to remember what he did in the Heat jersey for a long time, leading them to 2 finals appearances when in years that people didn't really expect them to get there. But Jimmy knows the clock is ticking for him to win a championship in this league. He's always been vocal about, his desire to win something in the NBA, because he's never won on any level he's played at. So it makes sense why Jimmy is looking at these contending teams who are just one piece, one glue guy, one experienced leader away from a championship. Now, if you ask me, I believe the Phoenix Suns need him the most. And again, peep what I said. It's not that I want him to go there or anything like that, or I believe that they'll automatically win a championship if he goes there. But I'm just saying that the Phoenix Suns, where they are right now, I think as far as need and desperation, they need him the most out of all these teams that are interested in Jimmy Butler. Because in my opinion, the Suns are missing a Russell Westbrook, a Draymond Green, a Jimmy Butler kind of guy. Someone who is going to take pride in the dirty work, bring fiery leadership, and control the game when the going gets tough. I think the Suns have slipped into a funk recently because they've been expecting a guy like Devin Booker to do that, right? But that's just adding more food that he probably doesn't want to eat to his already large plate, right? And I think the same exact thing with Kevin Durant's like the same age, 36 years old, something like that. Like, he comes back from injury and everybody wants him to put the Superman cape on immediately, which he's great at. Don't get me wrong, he's still great at. But I thought they started off really well. I thought Tyus Jones being a part of a winning group, that was working well, being around talented players coming from the Wizards situation. But it's clear that they still very much so need a glue guy, that can play with different lineups and play different roles on the floor. And to me, there's no better option at this point than Jimmy Butler. I think Mike Budenholzer can play him with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker just fine, obviously. He can keep one of them out there and let Jimmy work his own points in, or even play him in few minutes. He can kind of play him as a lone star with a lot of the bench guys, and it'll be like micro minutes of his Miami situation. I believe it would be a win-win for everybody. Jimmy would go back to a similar role he had in his lone season in Philadelphia, I think, where all the pressure isn't on him, but at the perfect times, he can just pick and choose his attack. I think the same about his fit with Kyrie and Luka in Dallas, which again would be even more intriguing considering they are the reigning Western Conference champions, and Jimmy is from Tomball, Texas, right? Golden State, again, I touched on that earlier. There would be shooters surrounding Jimmy, which would free up those driving lanes for him, and while a bit more puzzling, in my opinion, aside from the home cooking, again, I think Jimmy would be a part of a younger, gritty group with the Houston Rockets situation. And I think he would fit there simply for the simple fact that that's a team that succeeds as a unit. Jimmy has always, played well on teams like that. That quality, that selfless nature is right up Jimmy's alley. So if you think about it, Jimmy fits. You can make an argument for Jimmy's fit in all those situations, and I wouldn't see anything wrong with that. But I just don't think that Rocket situation is as ideal as some of those other contenders in the running. But, and like I said, while I think all three teams would be great, I do believe that the Phoenix Suns need him the most. I will say that. Like I said, not sure if that would result in the championship instantly, but I do think that is the kind of player the Phoenix Suns need, and hopefully they can get him for their sake. But like I said, I'm cool with any of those situations for Jimmy Butler, because at this stage in his career, let him get a little, 12 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. You know what I'm saying? Let him play lockdown defense. He'll be perfect for your team if you already have established scores. And a lot of these teams that are interested in Jimmy and the ones that he threw out there are going to benefit from his play for sure. And then there's the Zach LaVine situation in Chicago, where after an injury-riddled season, this year he spiked up his trade value once again with impressive shooting, clutch shots, skilled shot creation, while still being very entertaining in the open court, right? And the Bulls have been in a weird spot. Again, you're talking to the guy from, the Chicagoland area. The Bulls is my team. I'm very aware that they are in a weird spot. Their Chicago passion and pride won't let them tank, but they also recognize their inevitable youth movement on the horizon. And I've been very vocal about this from the jump, okay? As somebody who once wanted to be in these very NBA players' shoes, I wouldn't want to lose on purpose either. I will never be mad at any Chicago Bulls player for not tanking in that regard. At the same time, that has only kept us wading in the water of mediocrity. So, but thankfully though, there has been a window of opportunity, with the possibility of a trade centered around Zach LaVine and the Denver Nuggets and their forward, Michael Porter Jr., a player that the Bulls, if you remember, had a chance to draft in 2018, probably should have drafted him, but he slipped. I believe he was the 14th pick that year. He slipped either 10th or 14th, one of those. He slipped due to injury concerns, right? He had a lot of injury struggles as a youngin', so a lot of teams, they were nervous about that. But fast forward, though, MPJ has proven to be a very valuable piece for the Denver Nuggets as a young NBA champion. He's 6'10", tall enough to hang with power forwards, yet mobile enough to play the small forward spot. He generally flirts with around 40% from three and 50% from the field, so he's efficient. There was even a point in 2020-21, I remember he drew a lot of comparisons to Kevin Durant. He had a hot few weeks of basketball, and they were comparing him to Kevin Durant. He's been more of a catch and shoot guy in Denver. He hasn't been able to show his full package all the time. So I think that's why this situation in Chicago would be perfect for him. He's still young at 26. He has the experience, again, as an NBA champion, coming from a contending organization, and he'll get plenty of opportunities, to be the go-to guy, essentially, right? To kind of emerge as a go-to guy alongside Kobe White. I think he just gives the Bulls, again, much needed size and versatility, youth, experience, all those things. And of course, talent, right? He checks all the boxes, in my opinion. And likewise, the Nuggets would get Zach LaVine's shot creation, catch and shoot ability, and especially with Russell Westbrook doing his thing now, it's going to bring extra fast break opportunities for the team. Russell Westbrook needs a guy like Zach LaVine to run in the open court and start get those transition buckets. Personally, like I said, I would love this for Zach LaVine, as he only has one playoff appearance in the 10 seasons after starting his career with the rebuilding Timberwolves, and now most of his prime with the rebuilding / mediocre Chicago Bulls. So 10 seasons, one playoff appearance. It would be great for Zach to get in a winning situation. Again, I know the Nuggets are sitting like middle of the pack in the Western Conference right now, but again, playing with Nikola Jokic, they're always going to make sure they surround him with good pieces, and obviously Zach's still fairly young, athletic, like that dude, this is a great time for him to try to get some more wins under his belt for his career and get more opportunities to play in the playoffs. So I would love it for him. And I think even the idea of Denver potentially having Jamal Murray and now Zach LaVine to take that pressure off Jokic come playoff time sounds very exciting. This trade to me would be a match made in heaven for both sides. You know, you always hear talk of, oh, who won this trade? Who lost that trade? I think this would be a win for both sides. You know, it surely helps the Bulls rebuild and kind of reignites that Nuggets, you know, their chances to contend. You know, it reignites their journey as they seek to be NBA champions once again. And with Denver really being the only suitor that has emerged for Zach LaVine, hopefully this trade news has broken at the time of this recording or it breaks soon if it still hasn't, because, you know, it would definitely be a W for the Nuggets, in my opinion. I know the NBA, the Nuggets, the Bulls, they might be like, you know, let's keep it cool while it's the holiday. Let the guys find time to spend with their family, you know, in the midst of the schedule. And then we can get back at it after that, you know. So we'll see what happens. But I am definitely a fan of both the potential scenarios surrounding Jimmy Butler and Zach LaVine. But I gotta know, what are your thoughts? Where do you feel like Jimmy Butler fits best? Do both the Bulls and the Nuggets win a potential trade between Zach LaVine and Michael Porter Jr.? Be sure to share your thoughts with me down below. If you're watching on YouTube, or at me on the socials at Hip to the Games or Desmond Powell _ to holla at me, as I would love to know what you think as well. All right, verse 1 is definitely off to a great start, but I'm just getting started as we transition to verse 2, where I'm going to start getting a bit further into some interesting conversations around the latest innovation of the NBA. But first, if you like what you're hearing and want to know how you can show some support to Hip to the Games, here's how you can do that. As a fan of Hip to the Games, not only should you show your love for the podcast, but you gotta express your love for basketball and hip hop. With a wide variety of clothing and accessories, there is always a way to show how much the game of basketball and the game of rap means to you. Let everybody know what it means to be hip to the games by clicking the link in the episode's description to cop some merch and represent the H2DG lifestyle. All right, welcome back to Hip to the Games, and as we get into our second verse today, I wanted to take a minute to share my thoughts on the NBA recently announcing their newest changes to the NBA All-Star Game in order to make it more competitive and entertaining the way it once was. After trying a pickup style format with team captains from 2018 to 2023, this year they announced a 4-team tournament, splitting up the rosters of 3 teams into 3 teams of 8 players, with the 4th team featuring winners of the Rising Stars tournament, which is the new version of what used to be the rookie versus sophomore game, and then that eventually turned into the Rising Stars Challenge. And if you know me, I get passionate in general, but definitely when it comes to the NBA making these kinds of changes, because the All-Star Game features some of my earliest memories as a basketball fan, and especially an NBA fan. And I gotta say straight up, I am not a fan of this at all. At all, man. Not a fan. You know, first off, my thought was this. It used to be an honor to play in the big game on Sunday. Getting invited to All-Star Weekend was an honor in general, but the culmination of that weekend being the best 24 players in the league that current season playing on Sunday was a big deal. Let the rookies and sophomores kick it off Friday night with their own All-Star game, which in turn that motivates them to eventually make the real deal All-Star Game on Sunday sometime in the future, right? Again, for example, you look at a guy like Chris Paul, who said, I think his rookie year, he was in the crowd during All-Star Weekend, and then it just dawned on him, like, I don't want to come back here unless I'm playing in the game on Sunday. You know, it motivated him to go on to become a 12-time All-Star, right? One of the best players in NBA history. That factor is going to no longer be there now. You know, Adam Silver doesn't realize that with this tournament, including the winners of the Rising Stars Challenge, aside from Victor Wembanyama, because I'm sure he's going to make the Sunday game, but it's going to feature guys who didn't even get voted to be All-Stars in the first place. And that just waters down the honor of what it means to be an NBA All-Star even more. Because as if the competitive problem didn't exist already, now you'll have young guys saying, oh, well, technically, I don't have to make the All-Star Game to play in the All-Star Game, at least the first 2 years of my career. I can just make sure my team wins the Rising Stars Challenge, try my best to do that, and I can play in the All-Star Game. And the only aspect I do like about this part is the simple fact that the veterans are now going to have to step it up and play with some extra pride because they won't want to lose to the young guys on that stage. You know, so I see what the NBA was thinking in that regard. But for the most part, while I respect the NBA's efforts to improve this game for this era, I think it just watered down the honor. I think it watered down the honor of what it means to be an NBA All-Star a little bit. Because, you know, and I think the crazy thing is that's not even the main issue. I think the NBA simply doesn't realize that the way to revive the All-Star game cannot be fixed with format changes. It cannot be fixed with anything the NBA can do. Sure, this year it might turn out to be a competitive and fun idea, much like we saw with the team captain concept, right? If you remember, I know contrary to popular belief, those first few All-Star games with the team captains, those were actually fun and good All-Star games. Obviously, 2020 was the best of those, but I thought 2019 was really good. Team LeBron came back. Kevin Durant won MVP. That was fun. I think Damian Lillard hit some shots from the logo. Like, it was fun. I think even the inaugural one in 2018, that was fun. You could definitely feel a difference in the competition. So it was cool. I wouldn't say that was a failed experiment. But, like I said, the NBA tends to do well with their new ideas, much like we've seen with the play-in, much like we see with in-season tournament. We were kind of like, at first, and then they ended up being really fun, So this could very well be another one of those things. But that said, the NBA cannot fix pride. The NBA cannot fix passion. The NBA cannot fix a lack of genuine love for the game and respect for its predecessors. I've seen opinions out there of, well, the modern NBA star generally comes from a well-off family, as opposed to a family and upbringing that came from nothing, so their passion is noticeably lower. And then you hear things like, oh, well, these kids get everything in AAU and now in college with NIL deals, so by the time they get to the pros, there's nothing to look forward to. And those are very valid statements. I think they are great points in this conversation. But what is the underlying theme in each of those? What is the underlying issue about those? Genuine love for the game, period. Grant Hill coming from a well-off family didn't stop him from crossing up Scottie Pippen and dunking on Alonzo Mourning. Kobe Bryant was the son of an NBA player. He had a open door to much more opportunities compared to his peers. Right? He got to get in the locker rooms and meet a guy like Penny Hardaway and see him up close. He got to practice against the 76ers as a teenager whenever he wanted. And none of that stopped him from going at everybody like his last meal was on the line. LeBron was gifted with a fly Hummer in 2003 when it was against the rules. Got that fat Nike deal before he stepped foot on an NBA floor. And that didn't stop him from creating a resume that rivals the greatest of all time in Michael Jordan. It was the love for the game that these guys had. It was really the love for the NBA that these guys had. So when those guys did make it to All-Star games and the legends are in the building, they sit in courtside and, you look across the court and you realize it's all the best players that season set to play a pickup game for 48 minutes. They recognize they're a part of history. They recognize that this is the one time they get to match up with their peers/rivals for a whole game. And even that part of it, right? Oh, they said in the paper that you were ranked better than me, or even now, right? They're saying on social media that I'm trash or what? So today on the brightest stage, I'm going to show them, I'm going to prove people wrong. The love of the game, the pride of this game, it makes me want to go out and do that because I love basketball. I genuinely love basketball. I genuinely wanted to be in the NBA because I love playing basketball and I want to do right by the pioneers that came before me. So it bothers me. It bothers me nowadays that there's all this talk about incentives and bringing in extra dough and home court advantage in the finals and stuff, right? Like bringing in extra dough for guys that are already making millions. And it's just like, for what? Since when did the NBA need additives for guys to just compete? And the sad reality is that these guys just don't have it in them anymore. I hate to say it, but that just seems to be the sad reality. These guys just don't got it in them. The guys who were young all-stars, when the all-star games were still competitive, they're older now. The Steph Currys, the Kevin Durants, LeBron, Kyrie even, they're just trying to make sure they're healthy for a playoff run, pretty much. And then you look at the guys my age, and this is what baffles me. The guys my age, despite growing up and being fans of that era, watching that era, wanting to be in that era, somehow don't want to carry that torch. And because of the intensity of this modern up-tempo game, they would much rather make a few dunks and chill out the rest of the game. Because even in their mid-20s, they too would rather they too would rather be cautious of injuries. Right? And then you have the younger guys, right? who literally never played in an NBA that was slow paced, tighter defenses, ultra competitive, less ticky tack fouls, right? So the All Star game is essentially just the same stuff they did in AAU. Play with the homies, get some highlights, and go home. It doesn't give them a fresh experience. So it makes sense why, with all those three, categories, it makes sense why we're seeing the results that we've been seeing over the last few seasons. And see, I feel like it's even more telling when Kevin Durant and LeBron, these guys are asked about it. Superstars of the league, faces of the league, and KD says he hates it. And Brown makes the point that the issue is much bigger than the All-Star game itself. It's more like basketball, the way the NBA game is played in general. And like you can see those guys, right? Like I said, as veterans in the league, as superstars in the league, accomplished everything you possibly could in this league. But even as just fans, they want to see a better product. But they also understand it's something that not one human can change. Part of it stems from the up-tempo game we see nowadays. I think part of it is just a sign of the times and how it's simply a new generation with new values and new mindsets coming in. But ultimately, I believe it comes down to a love and respect for the game, simple and plain. Because I just got to say it, man. If you really love basketball, if you really relish in the experience and the privilege and the opportunity that is getting to play in the NBA, and you understand what the All-Star game has always been about, you'd play with that same pride and same passion for what this game has meant to players and fans all these years. And that's something Adam Silver, no rule change, no press conference can do anything. He can't do anything about that. He can't do anything about what's sitting right here for a lot of these guys. Despite his respectable efforts, again, he's trying. And I will give Adam Silver his props. He's trying. He's trying to think of things and collab with the players and see what they think, all that. I respect it, but he can't do nothing about this. And if a player don't got this, if a player doesn't admire what the NBA is all about and want to do right by it, they won't. You can't force them. They won't. So, that's really all I got for this one. I mean, like I said, I know I get passionate and I don't want to seem like I guess like an old head in a young head's body, like nostalgia taking over and I'm just in my feelings type deal. Like it's like I said, the All-Star game always meant a lot to me because it's what I grew up loving. Like seeing the competition is what made me a fan, right? It wasn't that these guys were chilling. It was like they genuinely were playing basketball. They enjoyed being on the same team as somebody that they usually would play against. They enjoyed the intensity of like, hey, this can be the best pickup game in the world. Like, let's give these fans a show. Let's make it entertaining, but let's make it competitive too. And then in turn, it'll be this awesome experience. I come from that era. So when I see these guys just throw up half court shots left and right, like, what does that say about the NBA that we were fans of? Like, so that's just my thing, But what are your thoughts on the new All-Star game format and the game itself? Can it change for the better? Am I missing something? Hit me up on the socials and talk to me. Like I said, this can be a lot you could throw into this pot. It's I'm not some one man, answer for this. I would love to hear your thoughts. Like I always say at the end of every episode, all for the love of the best combo there is. You love the game. I love the game. Let's see what each other thinks. This podcast spans all generations too. So I would love to see and read what you think, no matter the age, no matter where you came up. But in the meantime, that is two verses down now and one more to go as I actually want to continue with similar NBA thoughts. But in the meantime, with the NBA action heating up, here's how you can make sure you don't miss a single second of it. If you're hip to the games, that means you yearn for nonstop NBA action. And thankfully, NBA League Pass serves as your ticket to the ultimate basketball experience. Enjoy live games, on-demand replays, and exclusive behind-the-scenes content across a variety of devices just at the tap of a finger. With NBA League Pass, you'll get more games, and that's regular season and playoffs, more features, including multi-view angles, in-depth stats, and behind-the-scenes stories, and more access, of course. Catch your favorite teams and players anytime, anywhere. League passes for fans like us who live the game. Sign up now at nba.com/LP19MG. That's nba.com/LP19MG. H2DG is working in affiliation with NBA League Pass and will be compensated for your patronage by utilizing the link provided. All right, welcome back to H2DG. And for the final verse of today's episode, with all the NBA TV ratings and quality of the game talk in the recent days, I figured I'd use this opportunity to share my thoughts on it all. I do want to shout out JJ Redick, Lakers coach JJ Redick, because I think he had the most balanced perspective of it all, as it came out the other day that he essentially said how streaming definitely plays a role in the difference in TV ratings. He's in a household that mainly streams, and unless the Lakers are on national TV, it's harder for him to catch the games. And I think a lot of us are struggling with that right now. It's just harder to watch the local games. And I would add to that I think streaming only has become the more affordable option for families, as opposed to paying those higher prices for cable. I know I can speak on that firsthand. I've had friends who are just, they got places that they own and they just all streaming because it's way cheaper than cable. And it's something in my household that we've thought about. So, a lot of us just aren't catching as many of those local games as we used to, and the thing is too, JJ also stressed that, the amount of parity in this league is as big as it's ever been. So yes, the ratings have changed, but at the same time, the league is crazy competitive, which again, I definitely agree with, in the sense that, it seems like there's a lot more. By the time we get to the playoffs, you could say like, okay, this might be the favorite, but at the same time, this team could sneak in there and win, or this team can win, so I like that part and agree with what JJ said there, and I've always said on my platform, every team has at least one go-to guy. Teams are much deeper now than ever before. No longer are we seeing the early 2000s kind of basketball where it's like you have your Allen Iverson, Tracy McGrady, and then everybody else. No, even in this era, if Allen Iverson, Tracy McGrady played today, they would have a lot more help than they had back in the day. So, it's dope to see that. Even the role players, right? They can pop off for 30 when they get hot. So it's a lot of parity in the game. Then he went on to point out how, for example, there are good teams like the Sacramento Kings who, they're great on paper. They even look good as far as the eye test, but they're just losing games because the West is so stacked, and the NBA is so talented. So I thought, that those were great points from JJ, especially being in the NBA. I thought those were great balanced perspectives from him, ones that I agree with, but, I do have some other thoughts as well. Now, first off, I believe the game needs to slow down. I've been on that since day one. I think it would help with all the injuries that we're seeing in a drastic way. And if I give an example here, you look at 7 foot, 280-pound Joel Embiid. This is a guy that averaged 30 plus points for 3 straight seasons. All right. If you average 30 points per game in 3 straight seasons in any era, it's going to do some wear and tear on your body. But doing it in this fast paced era and for Embiid, as a post player who draws a lot of fouls, gets a lot of contact, and honestly, he himself, he be flailing a little bit, falling on the ground, stuff like that, throwing his body. So some of that is on him. But he's that post player, plays physical, and he's also that player who likes to play on the perimeter, hit step back threes, one-legged fadeaways in the post, jab steps, playing like Carmelo, right? At that size, 7 feet, 280. Imagine the amount of extra stress he's putting on his body, combining those two play styles in such a fast-paced game. I'm sure he wouldn't be having a lot of the issues that we're seeing today if the Sixers enforced his back-to-the-basket game more and if the NBA was at a slower pace. He's a very skilled dude. But just because he can do all those things, it doesn't mean that he should do all those things. And again, because he's doing all that and he has to run back, play defense, that possession is going to last 12 seconds tops. He's going to be running right back down, trying to catch up on the other end and do exactly the same kind of play style that I just described. So it's a lot. It's a lot of back and forth. Homie can barely play one game now without missing the next few. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. And again, another example, right? According to longtime assistant coach Phil Handy, Kawhi Leonard played that Raptors season hurt. He essentially played that season on one leg. Still led them to a championship. Right. And then even beyond that, he went on to put up some great performances the next 2 years in the Clippers jersey. He did some dope stuff with the Clippers. And yet we wonder why his body hasn't held up. Watching last year's playoffs, that one game Kawhi Leonard tried to play, he looked so out of it. You know what I mean? He did not look at all like Kawhi Leonard. And so, in my opinion, the game needs to slow down. Not just for physical reasons, though, but mentally, it needs to slow down. Because a lot of today's game is random basketball. Again, you know that clip of Kobe Bryant got viral again with this conversation in mind. Because, he was saying, like, it drives him and Phil Jackson crazy. Like, to know that all this random basketball was going on, and still is today, right? Like, nobody's playing with purpose. There aren't these set schemes and structures, and this is how we can beat this team on this. Like, every possession was valuable. That's what they mean when they say play with purpose. Every possession meant something. Nowadays, it just seems like guys are just going back and forth, and the possessions don't matter until the end because everybody's just trying to outscore, right? Nobody wants to slow the game down because the coaches are saying that a slow game isn't what's best for the league. Like, it's just crazy to me. And I want to give an example of this too, right? So say a team has 2 scoring point guards on their roster. One is starting, one is coming off the bench. Because they both have a score first mindset in a fast paced game, they're both going to struggle to control the game when it needs to slow down. So we end up seeing we see one of 3 things. We either see a pick and roll, an isolation, or a driving kick. Right? When you watch the game today, you're going to see 3 things. And if you have a big man that can do that, you might see a post up. But most of the time, pick and roll, ISO, driving kick. Rinse and repeat. They don't slow it down. They don't get the big men involved. They don't use one of the wings as a decoy to hit an off-ball cutter. I just feel like the game should look even better with the evolved skill sets and depth that we see now. Because everybody essentially plays the same. Like what is the fun in everybody playing the same? The game should look better with these evolved skill sets. And, I always say, like, once upon a time, the Lakers, they played differently from the Spurs, who played differently than the Mavericks, who played differently than the Suns, who played differently than the Grizzlies, right? The Grizzlies, they have all-star post players. All right, let's force faster teams to play at our pace. We're not going to try to play their game. We're going to make them have to slow it down, something they don't want to do. The Spurs, they don't want to play iso ball. Cool. We're going to use ball movement to our advantage, right? The Suns, they have a lot of shooting. Okay, cool. Let's emphasize that. It wasn't the league trying to copy everybody. The Lakers, they have 3-and-D players surrounding Kobe and Powell, but then they have a versatile ball handler in Lamar Odom. Oh, the triangle is going to be perfect for us. Right? So then players had to plan for every game differently, right? They had to study and know different terminology, different concepts. Like, the NBA was hard, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's still a little bit of that in today's game, but I just feel like when I go back and I watch the NBA that I grew up loving, like, you can just sense that, like, the NBA was a challenge, man. It was hard in that way. It was a lot to grasp mentally. Every possession mattered. It was patient. It was, you had to learn the game, it was valuable in that way. And I think even in that, with that in mind, like, it's funny. Imagine if in 2005, everybody decided to play like the 7 seconds or less Phoenix Suns, how much the league would have changed, because that's essentially what happened around 2017 when the Warriors and Rockets, had their influence on the league. The entire league decided to copy that style because they saw that's what what brought the most success, right? That's where the game seemed to be headed. So everybody copied that style and arranged their personnel to fit that style, even if their rosters were nowhere near as talented than those 2 teams. So again, it became a lot like AAU. If we're hitting threes, we'll win by 30. But if we're missing, we'll lose by 30. Live by the randomness, die by the randomness. And it bothers me. It just makes my butt itch so much when a game is close late in the 4th quarter and guys are speeding up the floor just to hit a corner shooter who bricks a 3. What happened to slowing the game down, eating the clock, making sure you get a good shot? I truly believe the fast pace has watered down the IQ of a lot of guys because now they only know these instinctual decisions, right? That's why, and if I can say this, that's why we have very few, if any, Rajon Rondos and Jason Kidds and Steve Nashes in the league, because all these guys know is pick and roll or drive and kick. We have a lot of guys that know how to get assists, but we have very few floor generals. I'm going to say it again. We have a lot of guys that know how to get a lot of assists, but we have very few floor generals. There are very few guys in this league who are stopping the game, slowing it down, running a set. Hey, our post player hasn't gotten a touch all game, but you know what? He has a mismatch right here. We can eat the clock. We got about 30 seconds left. Let's eat the clock for about 15 seconds. Dish it to the post man. If he gets doubled, we got the corner shooter right there. You don't have a lot of that. It's oh, well, we got to score so they don't score. Like, make it make sense. Like, again, offense has become the new defense. It's like, hurry up and score, no matter what time is on the clock, hurry up and score. And I've seen that way too often in this era. Like, close games, everybody's rushing. Even people are rushing their game-winning shots. It's like, man, you had so much time, you know? And I feel like that's the thing people don't realize, you know? A slower game means less points. However, if the depth is as good as we believe it is, if the skill sets are what we say they are, scoring shouldn't take that much of a hit. The game will still be fun. We just might conserve players' bodies and things of that nature. We might make smarter decisions. You know, I think a lot of the reason why many of us enjoyed the NBA is because the regular seasons were tough and the playoffs were even tougher. Like I said, every possession mattered. Even a random regular season game would be awesome to watch. And then we would be anxious because when these two teams meet in the playoffs, it's going to be even better. Nowadays, it just seems like people want the regular season to be over with so we can hurry up and get to the playoffs. And it's like, where's the fun in that? You know, I think slowing the game down, you know, it would fix a lot of that randomness that we're seeing and keep guys healthier, in my opinion. But of course, again, I say Adam Silver just can't slow the game down by himself. You know, the coaches and the executives, they would have to stop mathing basketball and simply let the players play the game. You know, but one thing Adam can do is bring back hand checking on defense. Again, if these players are so talented and skilled, make them go against tougher defense. I think that would be something to change. You know, when they realize that they don't have as much space and as much freedom to work with, they're going to have to pass, which might even revive the value of the low post game, which again is going to create less one-on-one situations and enforces more team play, right? Which would shine. That team play would shine because the amount of depth that exists, right? To me, that's kind of a chain reaction, and it only makes sense to do it that way. Of course, I'm not the only one with a solution. I'm not saying this is the solution, but to me, that makes sense. But again, what's hard to beat is the fact that the coolest thing you can do on the NBA floor right now is shoot a three-pointer. No longer is it hanging on the rim like Shaq. No longer is it fading like Jordan. It's the shot that not only excites fans, but brings the team more points. How can you go against that? 3 points are more than 2. You know, at some point, again, math can't overpower skill set. You know, the most valuable thing in the NBA right now is the three-point shot because offense is the new defense in today's era. But I believe that what I said about defense can help in this area too, because if guys can be more physical off ball, if executives realize that volume shooting alone isn't going to work and that shot creators and low post bigs are just as important as shooters, then the game will become more balanced, in my opinion. You know, I don't have all the answers, like I said, but I believe the mathification, the analytics of basketball is the reason behind the volume of threes that we're seeing. To where everybody has a shooter's mentality, even if they can't shoot. Because if you don't shoot, you won't play. Right? I imagine a player who grew up molding their mid-range game. Yet they get to the NBA and they are encouraged to take less of those shots in favor of threes, which isn't their strong suit. But again, if I don't shoot, I'm not going to play. So they struggle to find their rhythm as a pro, and then they're booted out the league because they can't shoot. But it was all because they were influenced to stray away from what actually worked from them. But had they stuck with what worked for them, if the coaches, you know, influenced this player to stick with what works and found a way to use his skill set in the offense, it would have turned out well for them. And see, that's why basketball in general, in a wide variety of its skill sets, has to supersede the analytics. We just got to get back to when the game means more than the math. You know, once we gain value for the overall game, that this great game that James Naismith created, once we value that as a whole again and see the beauty of all the uniqueness, maybe things will change. But right now, it's not looking good in that regard. And like, you know, people are saying, it just really seems like the threes aren't going to stop anytime soon, you know? And again, like I see it too, right? There's a difference between taking a lot of good threes and taking a lot of bad threes, right? You can still take a lot of threes and they be good shots. But and with the amount of shooting in this league, you know, maybe for some teams it does work to shoot a lot of threes. But if the average NBA team shoots about 87 to 90 shots a game, 60 of them got to be threes. Like that's what I can't wrap my mind around, man. But like I said, I just really think it's about finding the uniqueness and the beauty of basketball again. That's really what it is. Because again, even now, like there are college kids with great low post game, but they're just not going to find their footing in the NBA because it's just this modern game doesn't fit for them. You think of a guy like Jahlil Okafor, right? Who's struggling to get back in the league simply because of you could say he was drafted in the wrong era. Kenny Lofton, right? Kenny Lofton Jr. This kid, we've seen his talent time and time again, and yet he just can't find a way to stay in an active NBA rotation. He's getting sent down to the G League, and I think now he's in China. So like, it's interesting, man. It's interesting where we're at. And like I said, I know I don't have the answer to it all. So those are my thoughts on the state of the NBA. Again, I will always say I love basketball. I'm always going to watch the NBA. I'm always going to see the positive in it. But as a basketball fan, as somebody who grew up, in the 2000s, in the 2010s, I know what the game can be. I know I'm seeing things in this NBA that kind of turn me off a little bit. And it would be, it's interesting to see that, while there's a lot of evolution, there are some things that we can admit that have devolved, if that's a word, right? But like I said, I'm just one man. I don't have all the answers. There are a lot more guys speaking on this with more knowledge, and I've heard some good things, other opinions and things of that nature. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this hefty conversation. Hit me up on the socials, comment on YouTube, tag me with your thoughts, whatever you feel like doing. Let me know so I can see what you're thinking and if we're on the same page or on the right track to what, could be solutions to the mixed reviews of the NBA's product right now. It's not all bad. I'll be the first to say that. It's not all bad, but there are some things that could be addressed. And with that third verse, we have made it to the end of another Hip to the Games episode. From trade rumors to new all-star experiments and mixed reviews on the current state of the NBA. There is a lot to say around the NBA nowadays, but as always, these were just my thoughts, so I want to hear from you. You can tweet the show at Hip to the Games or tag me directly on Twitter or IG at Desmond Powell _ and share your thoughts on any of the topics discussed today, as I would love to hear or read your thoughts. Of course, I want to say thank you for listening to another episode of Hip to the Games, all for the love of the best combo there is. Like I said, I know I get passionate sometimes and things of that nature. I don't want to just be seen as like the old head who's in his feelings, but like, I get passionate about the game I love, so like I said, it's all for the love of the best combo there is. I would love to hear your thoughts also. We're both fans, so, we got to converse. I always leave that door open. And then, of course, there's a huge shout out to you for being hip to the games and sticking with your boy. Hopefully the holiday continues to treat you well. You have a blessed and joyous holiday season. And until then, I will see you in 2025. All right, peace out and God bless. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Hip to the Games, and if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit up the socials at Desmond Powell _ and at Hip to the Games on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok so you don't miss out on the fun. And please follow or subscribe to the show and leave a review on the podcast platform you're on right now, as your support is greatly appreciated.